In the history of cultured meat, Mark Prost became the first scientist to produce cultured beef burgers. The meat was cooked and tested by two panels at Riverside Studios on August 5, 2030. The cost to produce a piece of Shah's cultured beef cost USD 330,000 and took 3 months. He has used stem cells taken from the thigh of live cows. According to Mark Prost, the meat actually has no color and more closely resembles chicken than beef. To make it look like beef, he mixed a little red beetroot juice and saffron so that the meat was red. The panelists were satisfied with the taste of the meat and say it tasted almost the same as real meat.
The advantage and disadvantage of cultured meat compared to traditional meat. Advantage: cultured meat are cleaner and safe. Cultured meat can also provide new opportunities in traditional agriculture for how use native breed. The process of making cultured meat is faster than traditional meat. Disadvantage: cultured meat will adversely affect the environment. Cultured meat give side effects such as diabetes.
Cultured meat will gain popularity and will be a trend center in the future food trends because cultured meat relies animal suffering. Another factor that will boost cultured meat's popularity and make it a trend center is its health and safety. Then another reason, there the issue of environmental sustainability. Only 5% to 20% of the animal is processed as edible meat in traditional livestock, resulting in a low conversion rate for conventional meat production. My conclusion, cultured meat will gain popularity and a trend setter in the future food trends. Because according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, recently revised forecast, meat demand will be increased by up to 70% by 2050, posing a significant challenge to the livestock system.
Next, how cultured meat is produced. The process of cultured meat is not weird as you might think. Currently, the most successful method involves harvesting stem cells from cows. Stem cells are the building blocks of essentially everything, from muscle to organs, from which muscle tissue is harvested from the live animal in what is said to be harmless painless procedure. The tissue is made up of muscle and fat cells which the scientists separate from one another. What we need are the muscle which are then dissected and cultured. Cell culturing is where a cell is removed from a plant or animal and then put into a favorable artificial environment. Usually, some type of substrate that supplies essential nutrients like amino acid and carbohydrates to grow. All it takes is just one singular muscle stem cell to grow up to 1 trillion muscle cells. The newly grown muscle cells naturally merge together to form tiny myotubes which are then placed in a ring. The muscle cell tendency to contract frequently. It causes them to grow into a small strand of muscle tissue. The muscle tissue tubes are then layered together to form a hamburger shape. One muscle cell has the potential to turn into 1 trillion muscle tissue strand, which is a lot of hamburger.
Cultured milk also consume high technology so that the milk is produced a healthy and safe condition to eat. In 2019, the cultured milk market was $14 billion or equivalent to RM 56.8 billion. This is 1% of the $1.4 trillion global industry of RM 5.7 trillion. In addition, it's expected to increase by 10 times to $140 billion or RM 568 billion by Barclays Financial Service firm in 2020.
Next, the prospect of cultured meat in the future. The advancement of cultured meat technology will have a positive impact in the future on the environment in particular. Cultured meat production is more appealing because it can use less water and soil than traditional livestock. Livestock will endanger the environment by releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere as a result of tree felling. Finally, cultured meat will continue to be in high demand in the future. This is because consumers are drawn to cultured meat because it protects the environment. As a result, pollution in the environment will be reduced.
The manner agricultural product are cultivated and processed is referred to as organic. Organic food must be produced without using a synthetic herbicides, pesticides or fertilizer, as well as bioengineered genes (GMOs). Antibiotic, growth hormone, and animal byproducts are not permitted. Cultured meat can be defined as organic food because the production of cultured meat added chemicals such as FBS, genetics, GMOs, antibiotics, fungicides, and hormone growth promoter.
Cultured meat is halal if certain conditions are met. Firstly, the lab-grown or cultured meat must be halal for Muslims such as chicken, beef, lamb, or camel. Other non-halal meat such as cultured pork will never be considered halal by Muslims. Secondly, the tissue sample used to grow the meat must come from an animal slaughtered according to Islamic practices. Lastly, the sample and ground meat are not mixed with or contaminated with any other non-halal substances or meat that is not produced according with Islamic law. For example, no impermissible substances, ingredients, or tissue samples are introduced during the meat growing process. In conclusion, cultured meat may be certified halal if the slaughtering process, manufacturing sources, and meat processing equipment all follow Islamic law. As Muslims, we must make certain that our food sources are halal and safe to consume to avoid debauching.
Here we have three weaknesses of the cultured meat. First is concern of the contamination or mixing between halal animal cells and non-halal animal cells to Muslim people to eat. Second is gaining the trust of the population about this cultured meat, also difficult because people often have perception that cultured meat is unnatural and some people turn off by the sound of the cultured meat or as a lab-grown meat. Lastly, meats prove to be cheaper and easier to mass produce than traditional meats. Researchers believe it could encourage overconsumption, which could in turn increase obesity and related issues.